Pat Moore, who is the chair of our Quality of Life Committee and Community Board 1. Say hi, Pat. You got to unmute yourself. You have to unmute Pat.
Good evening.
Pat Moore, who is the chair of our Quality of Life Committee and Community Board 1.
Do you hear an echo?
There's feedback from somewhere. Yeah, I do. So we have an incredible tech team from the borough president's office. So I'm sure they'll fix that. I'll just leave that at that. Alrighty. This meeting for Community Board 1 tonight is again with DSS and DHS and Project Renewal, the topic of 52 William Street. We will be running a slight bit different than we ran last time. And how that is because we had a large number of questions that were still unanswered after the last meeting. We still, again, have from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. this evening. So we will be efficient. When we call people from panelists to speak, you have 2 minutes, not more. Please know that there is no back and forth simply because it's just not an option to be able to be very, very functional. Raise your hand and I will try and recognize you when I can. Let me tell you how the meeting will work this evening. So we're going to start with our elected officials if they have anything that they would like to say, and then we will jump immediately into the Q&A period. We do practice decorum and Robert's rules. A note from the last time, please don't put anything in the chat you wouldn't be really proud of or you wouldn't want your mother to hear or your child. I say that respectfully. This is a public meeting. Everything is recorded and everything lives on the internet for posterity. So with that, it's a highly charged event and we all know this and we all are working together on the same page. So with that in mind, let me see, is Senator Kavanaugh here yet? And if not, we will return for him, so no worries. Senator Kavanaugh? If he is not here, I know that we have our other elected officials on the line. I do not expect them to speak yet. So if someone does, we will recognize them as they come in. So we're going to jump right into some of the Q&A portions that we have from last week. And there were additional questions sent in within the last 48 hours, I know. So Pat, let's take it from there.
Okay. So one of the questions that we had is the move still going to happen? This is for DSS and DHS. Is the move still going to happen during the week of October 19th? If not, when? But let me also say that the community has recently heard that the move will actually happen beginning on Monday, which is the 12th. Is this true?
Thanks, Pat. This is Jocelyn Carter from the Department of Homeland Services, the administrator. The move is scheduled to happen the week of October 19th, no later than that week. We're in the process of getting the building prepared. The move is not happening on Monday the 12th. We are shooting to have the move happen no later than the week of October 19th.
Great, thank you. Has the city made a commitment for a date that the Lucerne would be empty? If so, what is it, and why is the move being rushed?
We will exit. Our plan is to exit the last person from that hotel during that week. Once the last person has exited, the hotel will no longer be in use. The contract will end at that time.
So that's the commitment. The date was to get out by the week of the 19th, right? And again, we feel like the move is being rushed. Is there an answer you'd like to give us on why it has to happen the week of the 19th and not later?
We had initially planned to move probably the week of the 12th, and we've pushed it back to the 19th. Give opportunity to make sure that the building is ready at the William Street.
Okay.
May I ask a follow-up? Pat, let me ask a follow-up. You said that earlier than the 19th. Can the move be earlier, and at what point earlier? If you've said not on Monday, but that there's 6 days left in the week. So are you talking Tuesday?
So are you?
Sorry. I
Yes.
apologize, Jocelyn. I'm looking for your picture just to make sure I've got you so I can see when you're talking. There we go. I've got you. Thank you.
Okay, so our plan is to not move. Our plan is to move no later than the week of the 19th. We are working to get the building ready. So there's no move happening on the 12th. There's no plan to move, on that week. If the building is ready and empty, Project Renewal could start moving the equipment in. But our plan is to move in the week of the 19th, no later than that week.
Okay, I'm going to continue then. So please comment on the recent news of the closing of NYPD support for security for shelters and how that relates or does not to the existing plans.
Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, Pat. So we know that the safety of those we serve is our top priority. Several months ago, when the budget was released during this fiscal year, we are committed to evaluate how we can provide security safely and more holistically. One of the things I talked about since I've been in this seat is making sure that we look at the entire picture of a person. And so we really want to look at a client-centered approach as we move forward. There are times when we know social services response to a mental health crisis may help a client who's experiencing a challenging episode and feel safer. On the other hand, we do know that our DHS police officers are trained in de-escalation, and they're also trained in crisis intervention. And so they are positioned to coordinate our security at our intake sites that have much more higher activity. And so we know there are no easy answers. We have to figure out how to strike a balance between both of those realities, keeping safe on one hand and secure in all we do, while listening to their lived experiences and learning from that. So we intend to work closely with our non-for-profit social services providers to discuss our reforms and our goals. I've been in this seat for just over 3.5 years actually. And we want to think about how do we move this plan forward. This is one of the things that I've been thinking about and working with my team on this shared vision. And so, looking at policing versus client-centered. So we want to make sure that we kind of have a balance there. But at this site, we did approve additional security staff for Project Renewal. I know that they are in the process, in the hiring process, and I believe that clients have been identified. Project Renewal, could you just confirm that? I think you've identified candidates.
Yes, we are in the process of onboarding engagement specialists who will work external to the building on engaging our clients if they're seen in the community towards the goal of bringing them back to the hotel for services. We should have these staff onboarded in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, so I'm going to go with 4. When the city cites a shelter, what coordination, if any, is done with NYPD, neighborhood community officers?
So at all, of the temporary hotels, our providers work with the neighborhood coordination officers to ensure quality of life. At our permanent shelters, we invite our NCOs to participate in our community board advisory board meetings. Once the permanent shelter is set up, we will establish that, and that will be led by the provider, and the NCOs will be invited to participate there. We have absolutely committed in all of our turning the tide shelters to have a community board established to make information shared between the community, and the NCOs participate in those.
Can I ask Jocelyn why you would set up a separate community board meeting beyond the existing system of feedback that has the NCOs have a meeting, that they do a neighborhood policing meeting, that they collect information from the people in the community and work with the community board? The community board itself has a quality of life committee. Why would you set up a third, diluting the process further, committee meeting?
So a community advisory board for the shelter, right? So the community board meetings with NCOs that I attend in my neighborhood will, certainly that continues, but at the shelter itself, in a permanent shelter, we have community advisory boards to really share information, what's happening.
We're talking, does that apply to, hold on. it's a little cart before the horse. We're talking about a temporary shelter. You're talking about permanent shelters. Is that relevant to this as a temporary shelter for a community advisory board? Because there has been no fair share review for a permanent shelter yet in Lower Manhattan. So please explain if a CAB applies where in the process, and if it applies for a temporary shelter or permanent or both.
The Community Advisory Board, we established them under our alternative type plan for permanent shelters. Once there is a the shelter, permanent shelter that we intend to have opens, there will be a Community Advisory Board for that shelter. We do not do advisory boards, community advisory boards in hotels.
And how?
Why not?
Pat, you go.
Okay.
Justine, no.
Okay.
Is there a reason that a temporary shelter, I mean, I'm not really sure what defines as temporary, as you know, we discussed last week, in Lower Manhattan, temporary has been as long as 15 years. So I'm really, you know, we don't know with COVID how long the restrictions are. If you look at the planning that has been done for the schools, it's a year-long program. So what is the temporariness of this shelter, and how often is the quote unquote temporary renewed in that case? So we understand, you say you don't do it for temporary hotel shelters.
We don't do them for hotels. These de-densified hotels we opened because of the pandemic to save lives. During this pandemic, we will follow the advice of the health department to establish when we will return to our shelter of origins where our clients come from. So we have to follow the advice and that guidance. Once we get that guidance and says it's time we can return, we will be able to do that. We do have meetings with stakeholders. We'll continue to have meetings with you all for this shelter as we are there.
I guess I wanted to ask a question. So if this is a temporary shelter and it's in a hotel and you don't do cabs for hotels, if this were to become a permanent location, would it be declassified as a hotel and only classified as a shelter, permanent, and so therefore you would have a cab?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when our intention is, as I've said since last week, is to open a permanent adult family shelter in this location. Once a proposal comes to us and is rated, we will start negotiations, and we certainly, as we open that site, will have a community advisory board. It will not be a hotel, it'll be an adult family shelter.
So I think we should go through the questions that Pat has about it being temporary. There are far more questions about permanence and the following of fair share and the process and open and procedure, documentation. There's so many more questions that come with that. So I'm gonna not jump on that now, and I'm gonna wait for Pat.
Okay, so we're just going to continue. So this move is not part of de-densifying an overpopulated shelter home, as their homes were already subdivided. So what part of the emergency order does this relate to with the move?
I'm a little bit confused because the need to operate this site for single adults is still part of the de-densification process. Our intention, though, as I talked about, is to turn this into a high quality shelter for adult families, right? So this will be the first of its kind in this community district.
Jocelyn, that's long term. We're talking the short term answers, not the long term for now, please.
So it continues to be a part of our de-densified efforts. So we continue to need de-densification. So this is why we're using that site.
But they are already currently de-densified at the Lucerne. So the question I have is, has the city made a commitment for a date that the Lucerne would be emptied?
Yeah, the Lucerne will be empty starting the week of the 19th of this month.
And why is that being rushed?
I think I Right. So our commitment is to not move before that week. Initially, we had planned to move earlier. At this point, we've pushed it back to that week. So we are making sure that the building is ready before we start moving the clients into the building.
But there is no difference in terms of de-densifying. You are not de-densifying this group of people from the Lucerne. It's an exact move, correct? It's an in-kind move from hotel to hotel.
Right, you're not decreasing the population. You're moving 235 people.
Right. So part of what we looked at when we moved initially, you know, we looked at really being able to redistribute and use a site that we have, because we have the opportunity to turn it into an adult family shelter. So this was already there. So we're able to move the men from, you know, where they are to the site down in Fidei. Less hotels, there are only 2 down in the neighborhood. And so we're able to de-densify using the site and get the ability to turn it into an adult family shelter.
So in other words, there is no reduction, and this is not de-densifying the group that was at the Lucerne. This is a hotel to hotel move with no de-densification of the group itself.
One of the things that I will say that we reduced the census now. So we're bringing 235, which is a less capacity that initially the census was.
Right, but you're still not de-densifying. The 235 is being moved in kind. So you have 235 at Lucerne, and you're moving 235 to 52 William Street. So the second part of the question was, what part of the emergency order does this relate to with the move if it isn't about de-densifying?
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that I have to say is that we get the ability to use the space to turn it into a long-term facility. We've had the opportunity. We no longer need it for the use that we were using it for. And so it gives us an opportunity to use this space, remove the numbers where they were, where they are now, to a site where there are less shelters in that neighborhood, in the Fidei neighborhood.
So
And
it really...
Go ahead, Pat.
No, I'm sorry. So it really doesn't apply to the emergency order.
It is part of saving lives during this pandemic. It is part of really not having congregate shelters. We moved back in March, April, May very quickly. We're looking to redistribute where the hotels are at this point.
Jocelyn, at this point, however, you have a group of men who are thriving in the location that they're at and have a potential for jobs that disappears, as the borough president has said, when they come downtown. Those jobs are not available in this area. There is nothing here. So why would the city choose to do this to a group of men to destabilize them? You could have just as easily closed down the shelter at the Radisson, the quarantine shelter, and you could have looked for a more permanent solution for people and gone through a appropriate process with fair share and found locations. This is not de-densifying. So why, explain to me, move people away from to recreate what they have, which will also be a loss because they are losing jobs. You may be able to recreate all the services with Project Renewal, but you cannot recreate the jobs, which is, I would think, I don't know, steps 1 through 5 in making successful transitions back to, for them. I mean, if you said to me, we found them 50 jobs down here, we got them 50 jobs, so they're not losing anything. But so far, this is a hotel to hotel move. This does not de-densify, so it doesn't fall under the de-densify a shelter. This is a space to a space. The only people who are losing here are the men themselves. I know that in Community Board 1, we are amazingly resilient community that will bounce back from the pandemic and the economic recovery. And we will work with the city to find a place that can be a good location for people to get back on their feet, a place where they're not on a tiny sidewalk, a place where your services can go, and a place where we can help everybody. This, so far, from what I'm hearing, doesn't say anything to that. Pat has another long list, but please, when you're answering, can you try and answer the direct question that she asked? Where in the emergency order does the de-densifying a shelter for a move that is point A to point B work, which is currently at the detriment of the people there?
So there are multiple, let's unpack what you just talked about. The men that are currently in the Lucerne who we're moving will continue to get the same services when they come down to the Radisson Hotel. They're also working with other organizations to look at job training. Project Renewal actually do have job training so that there's opportunity to be able to be self-sufficient. That is happening. The Goddard Riverside, and I know Madam Board President talked about this, the funding that has been raised. We do have, and this doesn't really will be helpful to you, but we do have other shelters up in the Upper West Side that would be able to benefit from that space that was found there, as well as the money that was raised to help folks in shelter. And so that's part of that, and that we would be able to have other clients utilize that. We have 17,000 folks in shelter who can certainly benefit, a portion of them could benefit from that. In terms of the emergency order, this is a pandemic. I know that, it seems like it's not, but it is a pandemic. We use hotels to be able to save lives. That is what we're doing. That is what we're continuing to do. We will be able to do the move down to the Radisson side to continue services that's happening, to keep them safe from not being in congregate settings. We are redistributing where they are now, and we have an opportunity to use a site that we can turn into a site that will serve our adult families. We also know that down in Phi Dai, there are 2 hotels, and one of the things that we do know, and we've said in the Alternative Tide Plan, is that we do want to have shelters in every community district. And so that's part of our overall planning. It is a safety measure. It continues to be a safety measure. The pandemic continues. So, this is where we are.
All right, I'm going to continue. So please define how 52 William is an optimal location. What other locations in CB1 were declined in favor of this location?
So it does meet our longer term planning. I talked about Alternative Tide Plan. It does meet our borrower-based approach. We do want to have high quality shelters in every district. And so we for us and for DHS and opening shelters that are a high quality, this does meet that for us. Using it for a quarantine site during COVID-19 created this opportunity for us. And so for us, we've been using it temporarily since March. This is another, continuing to use it temporarily while we move towards permanent location in this community district. We do not have a permanent location in this district. We want to have one in every district in New York City, and this gives us that opportunity. So for us, this is a short-term plan. We're soliciting right now for proposals. Our intention, like I said to you last week and tonight, is that our intentions is to move it towards an adult facility. This site gives us an opportunity. This, circumstance gives us an opportunity. And so
does the emergency order then bifurcate the need for fair share process in siting of a facility?
So for
are you citing a facility, a permanent facility under the emergency order, or will the city commit to the proper process that includes fair share evaluation
for
the city charter?
one of the things I would say to you, first of all, I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to just be very clear around that. And what I will say to you is that our work in moving towards high quality shelters has not stopped during this pandemic. So part of our job is to really create high quality opportunities for the folks who come to us in this emergency. That process is continuing. We've actually opened a site this week for single men. We have announced this is the 74th site that we announced. So the emergency order continues. Our work there continues. That hasn't stopped during the pandemic.
Jocelyn,
Processes have been continuing since we started in this pandemic. That continues. That has not stopped.
the process of fair share requires from city charter the acknowledgement and inclusion of all shelters, regardless if they are run by DHS or not, and all services. It requires a list of documents to be included.
So what I would
Everything
say,
that you have said and sent is only referenced and claims there are no shelters other than the ones that DHS has provided. That is patently false.
Tammy,
So I am asking about fair share in the siting because you keep referring to turning this one location into a permanent shelter. And my question is this being done under the emergency order? Or will it be done through the regular city process?
So I am so I am trying to hear the question and in my head trying to figure out kind of, there's two tracks, right? The process of fair share will happen, as we move towards moving this process towards a permanent shelter. There will be a fair share done, yes. That is going to be completed. What needs to happen now is that we need to get a proposal in. We have an open-ended RFP. Once a proposal comes in, then that process kicks in, and there will be a fair share done. So, that has not changed. That will continue to happen.
Fair share is supposed to be done before the siting. That is city charter.
So
correct.
Yeah. So once we get a proposal, right? Once we get a proposal, we will certainly have a fair share. So once the proposal comes to us, citing, we rate the proposal and then the process starts. And I will, we're going back and forth in this fair share piece, but through the city charter, permanent sites will have a fair share. Yes.
I'd like to go back to the other part of that question. So what other locations in CB1 were declined in favor of this one?
So what I will say to you is that the commissioner for the last few years has sent letters to every community district asking for to bring us buildings, right? To bring us locations that you all think would be a site that can be a shelter, right? So we have this opportunity now that we know of this one. If there are other sites that are available that can be brought to us, we will certainly evaluate them. So there's an open-ended letter that comes out. We say, hey, Commissioner Banks writes this letter, goes out that says, we're looking for optimal places to open shelters. Send it to us. Every community district has an opportunity. This one we know because we've been using it. So we have this space. We have this space right now. Our intentions are to move it through that other process.
So your answer is no.
So if if there are buildings you want to bring to us, certainly we will evaluate them.
And they may, instead of 52 becoming the permanent shelter, if there's another site that is a better site, that might become the permanent shelter.
Right. So we evaluate if there's another site. So what I'm saying to you is that we want to be able to have shelters in every community district in New York City. That is part of what we've said we want to do. That's what we're driving.
We have a shelter already that you do not recognize.
We announced 74 shelters in alternative type plan. We said we'd open 90. We're at 74. We have actually opened 40, right? Department of Homeless Services plan is to open 90 new shelters or to really raise the standard. Our expectation is that If a building comes to us, we will evaluate it. We get proposals, we evaluate them. So, if there's a building that you believe meets the standards, we will evaluate it.
So 52 is not a done deal as a permanent shelter.
So at this point, our intentions, we do not have a proposal.
Okay. So moving along, when is the contract up at the Lucerne? And will the city be paying for the Lucerne after these people are moved out? If so, for how long?
Once the last resident or client exits, the Lucerne will no longer get any payments from us.
Okay. And when is the contract up?
For the Lucerne, once the last client, the way the process works with us now, that we can end contracts at any time. So we don't have a need for the Lucerne. There would not be any contract ends at that point.
So once the last gentleman of the 235 moves out, the contract's up. Okay. All right. So.
And has a commitment been made to the Lucerne for what date that will be?
What I keep saying, and my belief is that the week of the 19th, we intend to move the last resident out during that week. Lucerne is aware that we are leaving. Lucerne is aware we're leaving that week. Our intention is to have all the residents out that week. Whatever date that happened, 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever date that is, that will be the last date that we pay for the Lucerne.
Okay, moving along. What is the city paying for the Lucerne location and how, what is the city paying for 52 William and how does that compare to the Lucerne and other temporary locations?
So we opened just over 60 hotels through the Hotel Association of New York during the pandemic. The average nightly rate is about $120 for the room itself.
So $120 per night at the Radisson is what we're talking about, correct?
The average for the hotels.
Okay.
Is that any hotel or is that specific to the Radisson?
That's the average for all the COVID-19 hotels that we've been using.
Okay.
Is the Radisson more or less expensive than the Lucerne?
The contract is through the Hotel Association of New York. I can tell you, I don't know what the number is for the Radisson. The average is 120.
And what role, Pat, you've got Hotel Association questions there, I know.
Yeah, okay, so where are we? Sorry, lost track. Was there any type of oversight or competitive bid process? Was there any adherence to the regular rules on procurement pursuant to the laws and regulations in New York City? How can this be justified with the Comptroller's Office, the charter mandated role in approving and registering contracts related to the COVID-19 pandemic? If you need me to break it down, I will.
Let me try and answer to the best of my ability, and then you could ask further questions. So those New Yorkers who experience homelessness certainly count on our services every single day. We really want to make sure that we have non-for-profit partners who deliver the services, and we serve as that safety net. So the city registered the contracts pursuant to the Executive Order 101, and that is based between the Mayor's Office of Contract Services and the Comptroller Office regarding contract registration during the COVID-19 crisis. And that is a goal to ensure continuity of shelter services and our ability to work with service providers, right? So this is through Office of Contract Services and the Comptroller's Office.
Does the Comptroller's Office want to comment on that?
Sure. The only comment I would add is that in August, we requested of the mayor to return some of those oversight authorities for contracting, which we, under usual circumstances, have. We totally understand that in the beginning of the pandemic, when it was about procuring PPE and ventilators, that of course, extreme measures were needed to be taken. But since in August, we sent a letter requesting that the usual registration and oversight and transparency process for contracts would be resumed per usual. So far, we've not received that authority and oversight back. And we continue to request that, given that the pandemic is, of course, ongoing, but in a more stable place now, that emergency authority be rescinded and the transparency and oversight mechanisms with which the controller's offices can usually use are re-implemented.
Have you been given any reason why they haven't returned the oversight to the comptroller's office?
Not to my knowledge.
Tammy,
I
anything?
see Yulene. I see Assembly Member Yulene looking fairly stunned and sort of like, so Yulene, feel free if you would like to unmute yourself at any point. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I also see, I see Manhattan Borough President Brewer here. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. You know, we are all very grateful for our elected support. I think Senator Kavanaugh is here somewhere, and I do see Council Member Chin. So everybody is here. Thank you very much. I'll let Pat keep going.
This is a fairly.
I do think everyone should be rallying to have the oversight put back at the Comptroller's office.
All right, this is a fairly long
Pat.
question. I'm going to break it down. What is the role of the Hotel Association in sourcing locations? On August 24th, DHS's contract with the Hotel Association of New York City was amended to increase the city's liability by the sum of nearly $222 million in connection with the conversion of hotels to house hundreds of people experiencing homelessness during the COVID-19 emergency. What accounts for this unforeseen additional expense, and will the Office of the Comptroller have the authority to review similar increases during the period extending beyond the present contract expiration date on October 12th?
So let's start with the role of the Hotel Association in sourcing. So available hotel locations are identified by the Hotel Association of New York, and that is based on our capacity needs and the need to effectively relocate shelters in a way that accommodates our clients' needs, the provider needs, staff, services, security. So identification is really driven by necessity and logistics and operational needs to make sure we're quickly and effectively ensuring we're providing the services, making sure there's effective social distancing so that we can reduce the risk of infection rates. The DHS's contracts. Oh, okay.
Do you need me to read it again?
Yes, could you please?
On August 24th, DHS's contract with the Hotel Association of New York City was amended to increase the city's liability by the sum of nearly $222 million in connection with the conversion of hotels to house hundreds of people experiencing homelessness during the COVID-19 emergency. What accounts for this unforeseen additional expense, and will the Office of the Comptroller have the authority to review similar increases during the period extending beyond the present contract expiration date on October 12th?
So at this point, we're not in a position to have individuals return to the congregate shelters, right? So yes, our contract, the COVID hotel contract expires next week. So we anticipate extending our contract so we can continue to provide the services that we are. We want to continue to save lives, we want to protect our clients, we want to make sure we can social distance. We will need to extend it as we work with DOHMH on when and how it will be safe for us to return to the congregate settings and phase out the use of COVID hotels. The extension term, right? The precise terms are not yet finalized. I do know it's been in the papers, it'll be for 6 months, but we can certainly cancel it whenever we're ready to do so. So, you know, if we're able to relocate and end the use, we're able to do that. And also we're able to, like the Lucerne, end the contract with any specific hotel if the need is no longer there. I hope that answers your question.
Tammy, anything? Digesting?
Not going there. Keep going.
Okay. What is the length of the commitment made to the hotel? I guess that's 52 William. And what is the renewal process? Will those contracts be subject to the regular procurement process?
So at this Radisson Hotel, the contract extension is being finalized, like I talked about. It'll be for another 6 months. You do know that we can cancel it. So if we need to end the use, we'll be able to do that. And so it is really same as any one of our COVID hotels that we're using. It's a 6-month contract. But if during that time, anytime before that, we're able to return to the congregate sites, and the city and the Department of Health says it's safe for us to do that, the contract can be ended.
So, I mean, so you're saying you can extend the contract for 6 months. What's the renewal process? How do you go about, so what determines 6 months as opposed to 9 months as opposed to a year?
I am not so sure, I'll tell you that. I mean, it's through our ACO's office. So I can't really speak to, this is the term of the contract that our ACO and Housing Association of New York has established. In terms of this one, I don't have a specific why to this to your question.
Okay. Let's see. Will the contract be renewed until the emergency order is lifted, or will another move be planned?
Asking if we're going to.
These are questions that came in from residents in the community. So will the contract be renewed until the emergency order is lifted? I guess you answered that. Yeah. Or will another move be planned? So
right. So we need to extend it as we work with DOHMH, really to look at when it will be safe for us to phase out the use of COVID hotels. So again, it's the same, kind of premise. If we're able to return to the congregate settings, we will do so when we're able to do that. We have the ability to end the contract if we don't need to use it. So I don't have to stay in this space for 6 months if we're told we can move back. I can, the agency can end the contract.
Okay. The next question is you've pretty much answered it, but I have to ask it. Once the emergency executive order is lifted, will this group of people and others be moved back to their original homes?
Once the emergency order is lifted and it's
lifted, will they be moved back to their original shelters?
Yes.
When the emergency
is that
order,
a guarantee and requirement? Or if you turn this into a permanent shelter, would they be offered permanent residence at that location?
At this location is for an adult family, a shelter. These are single men. So for this cohort that we have there, they will not have an ability to be in this site. We will not be ready to have any persons in that site once the men return to their shelter, their home site, because we'll have to go through the process that I talked about earlier. And so we have to go through that process. We won't be able to say, you're in this site, you can stay here as a shelter. We're making it, if we can get through the process, an adult family shelter. So the plan is if there's another move, it'll be back to their home shelters, into their home shelter.
This may sound redundant, but let's see. When the emergency order is lifted, what is the timeline and process for the residents in temporary shelters to be moved back to their original shelter?
So we phased the moves in, I will phase the moves back. So it will be a phase-in plan once we get the authorization and that it's safe to do so. It is, we have 60 plus hotels. We moved our transfers really were based really on health reasons. The critically people who we believed were the ones that would have been really affected quicker. That's what we based the exits out on. And we'll have to figure out, kind of how do you put the phase back in, but it'll be a phase in over time.
Does the temporary emergency executive order suspend the requirements for fair share in terms of process?
So the fair share assessment will be undertaken. It's done for any permanent shelter. We don't have any permanent DHS facilities down in this community district. And so, yes, we'll go through a fair share.
There are permanent homeless facilities in Community Board 1. I would really appreciate if you would stop saying that there are none, because they do exist. We have a variety of shelters. Just because DHS doesn't operate them does not mean they don't exist. So, and it is unfair and incomplete and inaccurate public information to continue to say that. I'm sorry, Jocelyn. I understand that it is not your service that operates it, but it is exactly like I said before. It's like a brand new hotel company coming in and saying there are no hotels in your location because they don't want to recognize the flag of somebody else. They do exist, and I would appreciate recognition of that.
Well,
It's actually one of the large concerns. It's actually one of the large concerns for us because of the fact that the shelters are so close together, and one of them is a DV shelter. Just
So I am specific and being very specific. There are no DHS facilities in this community district. And for us, our intentions is to have a permanent shelter in every community district in the city of New York.
A permanent DHS shelter.
Mhm.
However, fair share requires that you, which is city charter, that you consider all facilities, every facility, before that decision is made.
No matter who they're run by,
So
operated by.
there will be a fair share for the permanent site.
All right.
Keep going, Pat.
How does the governor's order to reopen shelters relate at all with this move?
It does not.
All right. So that's the end of the questions that were based on temporary shelter. Now there's some questions about permanent shelter.
Mhm.
Please define the process of siting of a permanent shelter. How does that relate to the temporary siting in this case? Are they related in any way? You may have answered it, but
That's okay, Pat. So the siting of permanent shelters is not related to temporary use of hotel rooms. COVID did create an opportunity for sites to be brought to us based on current use. So in terms of siting permanent shelters, right? So I talked about the mayor's turn-to-tide plan that we're operationalizing. We report and we know that New York is experiencing homelessness come from every community across the 5 boroughs. We want to make sure that we have opportunities for shelters to be in every neighborhood, not just in the neighborhoods where they've been concentrated in South Bronx and East New York and Brownsville. And so we want to make sure that every community come together to address the crisis that we're in New York City. And so that's what our intentions are. So our plan to turn this into a permanent high quality shelter. It'll be the first of its kind I talked about in this community district. It'll offer adult families who are experiencing homelessness opportunities to get back on their feet, to really get opportunities to become stable, get closer to the anchors of life during these unprecedented times. We will review a proposal, whatever comes to us from a non-for-profit service provider. We will look at what on that proposal says. We will rate it. Our intentions are to be able to open adult family shelters with a provider that can provide the services, but even more in a community district where there's not a DHS operated facility as per our turn-to-tide shelter, our plan that we put out in February of 2017.
Pat,
Mhm.
let's go to the next question because it's just a repeat. Jocelyn, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know you're on a limited time. It's a repeat of the same information without a direct answer. So I apologize. I don't mean to be rude, but we have so many questions and I want to make a maximum, and we have people who would like to speak.
Tammy, do you have I just lost the questions for some reason. Do you have the list?
I have some of them.
Can you pick up while I try to find, I don't know why this happened.
It's okay. While you're doing it, I can take some of the ones that have come off the chat and some of the ones that have been texted, emailed. Thank you so much, everybody. One of this is an opportunity to explain whether or not there was a question that came up last time about the appropriateness of the building and asking if the water cooler, because we had photos that were sent to the community board, that the water tower on top of the building has been open to the elements, and whether or not it is therefore a safe building and how that's been addressed.
Yes, it was the gravity tank that was damaged. That's the tank for the emergency sprinklers. It gets activated during a fire, so it has been repaired. There was a remote testing for the cooling system. It's not connected to the gravity tank, so that gravity tank was corrected at the site.
Okay, there's a couple of questions in here that definitely revolve around project renewal and the operation of security. There's been a lot of questions that have come up in the chat, and I would welcome Eric and Jody to answer them. And some of them have to do with if you can go over curfew, no curfew. Are shelter residents allowed to remain inside the building during the day if they choose to? How many people per room is it? And what is the security look like? They have seen articles, you have provided some information, and I believe our district manager is going to put an updated link in or he'll send it to me and I'll stick it in the Q&A for people. So either Jody or thank you.
Eric Rosenbaum here. I'm the president and CEO of Project Renewal, and I'm also joined by four of my colleagues: Jody Rudin, who is the executive vice president and chief operating officer; Katie Bauer and Kadan Grinnell, who are both vice presidents of programs overseeing the shelters that these men come from; and Charlie Mullum, who is our director of security. I'll answer a couple of the questions, and then I'll have Jody handle the other ones. As regards curfew, there's a 10 o'clock curfew. If men come back to the facility after 10 o'clock and they don't have a pass for work purposes, because some people work after 10 o'clock, they lose their right to have the room in the hotel. But we keep them inside the hotel because we don't want people out on the streets while we engage with DHS around the process of whether they're going to be reassigned to another shelter location or be allowed to stay and have their bed back. No resident is forced out of the hotel. In fact, that hasn't been a policy for a long time, but certainly during COVID, we want to encourage people to stay inside the hotel. So no one is forced to leave their room or the hotel. I'm fairly certain I'm right on this, but every person will have their own room at the hotel, and someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I'll turn it over to Jody and probably Charlie to talk about the security arrangements. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Jody Rudin here. Eric, you're correct. Each client will have their own room. I'm going to turn things over to Charlie Mullum, our director for security. He can give an overview of how we approach security. And there was also a question earlier about our relationships with the precinct's NCOs that he can speak to as well. Charlie?
Thanks, Jody. Good evening, everyone. Yes, we currently are using Arrow Security. They're at the Lucerne, and that entire shift will be coming over to the Radisson. The shift will consist of 26 guards in total, 24 guards and 2 supervisors, 1 supervisor for the inside, 1 for the outside. We'll have 2 at our access area. The supervisor and the guard on the outside will be doing street patrol, usually a block to 2 further away from the shelter. That's usually the scope of their coverage. The coverage is 24/7. These guards have worked with these clients since the original days when we were about at the original 2 shelters that we moved out of in the first place, 3rd Street and Kenton Hall. So they're very familiar with the clients. Arrow has been with this company and has been not only at this hotel, but 3 of our shelters and what now are the other new hotels that have formed because of COVID.
Did we answer all of the questions?
Charlie, did you answer about, sorry, I'm trying to answer questions in the chat as we're going along. You've answered about the people not having to leave during the day. You've answered that people can stay in the rooms. How many people of the 265, are they all one person in a hotel room? Are there multiple people in a hotel room?
One person per
And
room.
It's 200
and there was,
and not 265, and everyone will have their own room.
And the
Okay,
part of the
and
question was
did
about the
you
NCOs?
right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't answer that part of the question. Like I do at every location, I'm prior federal law enforcement. I know these officers. I meet with them once we get into these new locations. This case was no exception. I met with the 2 NCOs, Officer Solomon and Officer Painter, that cover this area. Last week, we've already visited the Pine Street School, the Quad Prep School. I've met with people from 28 Liberty, the directors of security there, Deutsche Bank officials yesterday. Tomorrow and all of next week, I'll be going to other schools. I understand there's another school on Cedar Street. I'll be visiting with the officials there, exchanging contact information. So this is usually the process. I attend build-a-block meetings, which are precinct-run NCO meetings that they hold to deal with any quality of life issues, usually in the precinct. But obviously, I would be there for anything if they have one during our duration at this hotel. I would be there answering any questions regarding the hotel and project renewal. So yeah, I've been in touch with the NCOs, and we talk regularly.
By the way, Charlie,
were you? Go
sorry,
ahead,
Jamie.
Pat. I'll follow up after you.
Okay. By the way, there are 2 high schools on one is on Trinity and Cedar, and one is on Thames and Trinity. So they're both on Trinity. So you'll see when you go over there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Charles, there's been, obviously, because this building is highly situated next to also elementary and pre-K locations, there's been a lot of concern. I understand, and I will say this is something that I will not ask because it is unfair. These are people, and these are people trying to get back on their feet. I don't need to know, nor does the public have the right to know about their personal health, right? Or anything else. We have already been confirmed about the concern about sex offenders, because that was a topic that was on the Upper West Side. It has been confirmed. I'm saying it out here, so I stopped from the 6th time somebody asked. No, they are not. DHS has confirmed, and Charlie can confirm beyond that, that they are not part of the Lucerne population moving to our neighborhood. Have you seen a reduction in security incidents at the Lucerne over the course of time? And are you confident that that sort of, the sort of good place that they are at the moment is able to be replicated at the Radisson?
Yes. When we originally got to the Lucerne, we had approximately 287 clients, which has now been whittled down to 235 or 37. I continued here, mid 230s. The people that have left over a variety of reasons and showed themselves not to be appropriate for hotel living. And these people that are coming here now are people who have never had any issues with the PD while we were up there, have shown themselves to be exemplary as far as their behavior, have not had any run-ins with the law. And I actually speak to the lieutenant and the NCOs of the 20th precinct, which is the precinct where we were with the Lucerne, as recently as today. And he's even told me, I haven't had any issues with the clients in the last, weeks. I haven't talked to him for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and he goes, yeah, everything has settled down. There hasn't been any activity at all to discuss with you. So, we didn't raise any indices when it came to any type of crime, and none of these clients that are coming this time around to the Radisson were involved in any type of violent behavior.
Thank you. Do you know if there's a decision on a plan for smoking? That has come up many, many times, especially because this is next to a pre-K center. And there was a lot of concerns about where are the men going to go to be able to smoke.
And recreate. It's not just smoking. Yeah.
Correct.
I'm jumping in. There's ample space in the hotel for recreation services. We stopped the agency saying clients had to leave the building since 2016. So that's not, there's nothing happening there in terms of finding a different smoking area. We're still at the same place. There's not a defined, this is where the space they're going to go to for smoking. We will continue to monitor. The security folks will be out there moving people along. But no, I don't have an answer in terms of a different area for these clients to go to, and the public spaces. I said last week that they do have rights to public spaces, but we are looking at opportunity to find other places. I don't have an answer for that today.
That's an important quality of life issue for the people who are surrounding that building with preschools and elementary schools and residents. That is a plan that needs to be made for the people in the shelter so they have a comfortable place to go, and for the people in the community. This is not just about the community, but it's not fair to the people from the shelter either. And it would be appreciated if you can figure that out. Much like they have a place on the Upper West Side, just saying.
Want me to go on?
Your mic is on, but please wait.
Yeah.
We're looking through the rest of the questions. Pat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you want me to go on?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
There's
so
COVID CDC questions too that had come up.
Do you want to take it, or you want me to go with what I've got here?
I'm going to ask that one because it is an explanation and how the DHS, based on the deference to the CDC guidelines, if this is not an emergency move because they are safe in the Lucerne, how does DHS justify the move in deference to the CDC guidelines? That's one.
Reality is that the men are not in a congregate setting, will not be in a congregate setting. Our Project Renewal just informed they'll have their own rooms. So the de-densification continues, right? We moved multiple shelters to the space uptown on the west side, and now we're looking to redistribute, and being able to use this site, giving us the opportunity for a long-term site is where we have landed.
So this is not about de-densifying then the people in the shelter. That's what you just said.
It certainly is. The original shelters are congregate. So we de-densified.
Yes, I understand the original, but this is the fourth move for these people.
Continuation of a de-densification project to make sure that folks are safe.
Okay, let me look at my clock.
All right, I'm going to go then.
Pat,
so last week
going.
there was some discussion about this medical van that was going to be located on the street. So, and we said that the street was not large enough to accommodate it. Has there been other plans made to relocate medical services?
Yes. So currently at the Lucerne, we provide primary care through our mobile medical van on a bi-weekly basis. And we're able to do that because of the particularly large corridor that is 79th Street. But we heard loud and clear from you all that William Street would not be appropriate. And we completely concur with that assessment based on our visits to the location. So we're working on an alternative plan to provide primary care health services to our clients at the Lucerne, at the Radisson. It may very well be that we bring a provider on site, but we can commit that we're not going to bring a mobile medical van to William Street.
Great. And last week, we also asked to get a 24/7 contact phone number. That might be Charlie. So if residents see something happening, they can call in real time. Charlie, you there?
I will say, Charlie, I'll hand this to you in a minute. We have amended and added content to our one-pager fact sheet. We're also in the process of putting this up on our website. We now have an email address that we want to encourage people to reach out to if you have any questions. And that's theradisson@projectrenewal.org. And again, that's on the one-pager that we're circulating. At this point, what Charlie is, and he can talk about this, handing out his cell phone to all of the relationships that he establishes in the immediate vicinity of the hotel. We are a little bit reluctant to put a phone number out there because based on our previous experience at the Lucerne, it got so inundated with phone calls that we were unable to manage it. So I think we'd prefer to start with email and start with a direct cell phone of Charlie's to the immediate neighbors, and then continually assess whether we should refine our approach. Charlie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
And how will you get the phone number to the immediate neighbors?
Charlie walks it around to them.
Yeah, I've like I said, already gone out, and I'm going to go out to all of the residential buildings, giving my card to the the doormen or whatever. I mean, I just want to make the distinction because this was something that needed to be done at the Lucerne as well. First of all, if people see something that might be a guy's hanging out on a corner too long or a little too loud, calling Charlie or making that an immediate crime that you need to think that needs to be addressed is different. A quality of life, if you see something, a crime that's ongoing and active, you would call 911. You would do that before Charlie and Project Renewal arrives at the site, and you'll do that after we're long gone. So a 911 call for anything that you see is a crime is necessary. Other types of things, you can call local precinct or 311 for quality of life stuff. What I'm interested in knowing is if there is something that you see that's chronic with with people who you believe are our clients, this is intelligence that I would like to know, and I would address immediately. And the people at the Lucerne and people in the Upper West Side could attest to that. I'll be there every day. I have, like I said, a very large contingent of guards, both inside and out. I'm all about sharing intelligence, and the officers that have met me already know that. I've met, like I said, officials from the schools. I know pickup time. I know, dismissal time of the schools that I've already been to, and I'll have guards out there. I appreciate all of this, and the only thing that will prove it is as these days unfold, you'll see the presence of our people out there. But we're not the sole police force of FIDI or the sole police force of 52 William Street. The police are, and they will be there to complement us if necessary. But I just want to make that distinction between what is stuff that falls under my purview and what would maybe generate a 911 call. Because as soon as a name or a number goes out, all of a sudden the calls come to me like, can you fix it? Can you fix it? Can you fix it? Some things are appropriate for that, others aren't.
I'd also like to
Charlie,
add.
I want to recognize Lucian, who has something to add, who's our district manager for Community Board 1. Lucian?
Thanks, Tammy. One thing that I found from working with the public and Pat through the Quality of Life Committee is that many people still feel like 911 should be treated like the old days where, there were reports that all the circuits were busy and people couldn't get real emergencies in because it was tied up. That's really not the case anymore. Really, you should call if you see anything that looks like danger or a crime, and let the 911 operators figure out what sorts of services to send, maybe not at all. So it's really one of those things where we'd rather people call 911 regardless of what they're seeing, as long as it's a crime or something dangerous. Please feel free to do that. Don't hold back. Don't self-select. Let the operator, the professional, make that decision.
And I wanted to add that if it's a quality of life issue and not a crime, to please let CB1's office know. You can call 311, you can lodge a complaint, get the complaint number, and call the office and give them the complaint number. And we will reach out to Charlie and his staff.
Pat and Tammy, can I jump in for 10 seconds on
Sure.
one last security issue? I've seen in the chat a few times, I think this chat and the previous one, the question posed of, if everything's okay, why do you need 25 security guards? And I just want to make clear that this is really our attempt to be proactive rather than reactive. As Charlie mentioned, we ended up transferring about 50 clients out of the Lucerne because we didn't think they were a good fit, either clinically or behaviorally. And it was often our security force in the community acting as eyes and ears, helping to facilitate those decisions. Another area where security has come in extraordinarily handy in the pandemic is helping to issue reminders to clients around enforcing mask use. So I wanted to share that information.
Thank you, Jody. I have one more question here on our list. So are there volunteer opportunities if the community wants to engage?
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say absolutely. One thing that happened at the Lucerne that was really, really lovely was that people from the community would bring games. They would bring individually packaged snacks. Single ride Metro cards are very useful. So there are small items like that which we can accommodate, which are really quite helpful. And we will make sure that there are opportunities for people to volunteer in ways that allow them to actually get to know the clients themselves, because that really goes a long way to reducing some of the fear and concerns that people have about people.
I just want to give an enormous shout out to the Open Hearts Initiative, who formulated themselves on the Upper West Side to cultivate relationships with our clients, to engage in activities with them, everything from voter registration drives to helping to run recreational programming, spiritual walks. We now, and I know I speak for many of our clients in saying, have deep admiration for this group. We'll miss them. It makes it heartbreaking. One of the reasons why it's heartbreaking to leave the Upper West Side. But I understand that the leadership of the Open Hearts Initiative is working with a local group in FIDI, Friends of FIDI, and I think they're both represented on this call. So we're hoping some of the fantastic work of the Open Hearts Initiative will be picked up by the Friends of FIDI group. And I see Shams raising his hand. I know he's going to speak about the impact of Open Hearts on his life and his experience as well.
Great, thanks for the answers. Tammy, I'm done with my list of questions.
So, I mean, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that I definitely want to, we're going to move to panelists, but I have questions and a closing that I'm going to ask, because we're talking about temporary, we're talking about permanent, and we're talking about process, right? And unfortunately, not a lot of it. And the arbitrary way that this has, one, come to Community Board 1 in terms of sourcing a location, everything else, is very disconcerting for everyone in the community. The lack of recognition of fair share, no comment on it, and no fair share analysis is really sort of stunning to me. But what we need to do is go through some of the statements of the people who have not spoken yet, because this is about people. This is not just about the buildings. And so with that, I want to recognize Sham, who can unmute himself, or we will unmute him. He is a resident of the Lucerne. Sham, you're on.
Hello, greetings everybody. It's good to be here. It's great to have a seat at the table. That's what I always ask for. I definitely appreciate you, and I appreciate CB1 for holding these forums, because first and foremost, you know, what I'm hearing from you is that you really care about what goes on in your community. And you have spoken so much about the impact that such a move is going to have on the residents, which I think is great. Of course, Project Renewal has been great for me. I always say that they saved my life. So I'm just a testament of their ability to do good for a vulnerable population, those of us that deal with substance use disorder and mental illness. So let me say this. Many of us at the Lucerne do not wish to move. We don't want to move because we've been moved around quite a bit, and just up and moving like that, especially with such short notice, is traumatizing, to say the least. The other thing is that the impact that Open Hearts and the supporters in this area of the Upper West Side has had on us is something that we've never experienced. Many of us have, myself, have struggled with homelessness since I was a child. So now, you know, this is the first time that I've seen a community come to the aid in the way that they have, with no funding. They're not a nonprofit or anything like that, and just say, look, you know, we care about you and we want to show you some love and some support. And the magnitude of that has gone a long way to eliminate the trauma we started to feel due to the fact that we believe we were wrongfully depicted in much of the media and stuff like that. You know, so I say, like, you know, DHS, the city, they made a huge mistake in moving us to a new community on such short notice without working with the community. And that had a negative effect on those of us who are residents and under their care. Okay, in the middle of COVID, things happen, mistakes happen. However, due to all of this, we ended up in the great position to be able to look at those mistakes and correct them. We also were able to do some things that I've never seen done in the shelter system. So here at the Lucerne, Project Renewal has opened its doors to the community and allowed groups like Open Hearts and programming, even from within with their own recovery center, to do services that didn't even exist in the shelter. And most of this, I don't think, is requiring any outlay of funding or anything like that. It's just people that care, that are saying, let's, you know, do a spiritual walk and talk. We have a number of, the whole clergy from this area is working with us. And in fact, is making connections in your local area with Trinity Church to set up other additional things that might benefit us in that community. Open Hearts is connected with Friends of Fitty and also working in that regard. So I think that this does allow for us to have a unique opportunity to create a model of how to properly integrate a community, a homeless population into a community, and do some good things that benefit not just the community, but also the homeless population, all stakeholders. The only issue that I really have is I really believe that to move so quickly, that is where I have my issues. Moving so quickly, I don't think is the best move. I think that ultimately, if things like the IT infrastructure that needs to be in place is done after the fact, is going to have a negative effect on the community. Maybe not to the extent that it had in the Lucerne, because we are aware of some of the states, some of those that need a higher level of care or need to be in other type of facilities, they have been transferred, so they're no longer here. But I think that it's important to give Project Renewal the time to have their IT infrastructure in place. Ironically, within the past 2 or 3 weeks, Project Renewal has been moving people out of the shelter system into permanent housing. And that has been, I haven't seen that at all in my time of being in the shelter. Every day I walk out in the hotel, somebody else is going to see an apartment, someone's on an interview. So people are actually being moved into permanent housing. And my understanding is that if that happens in Fitty, what happens is the population won't rise in the shelter. So, you know, we expect that if they're able to continue that, we'll be doing the right thing in terms of getting us from the hotel to housing. But I don't think that moving so soon without that infrastructure in place is going to be a good thing. The other thing that I would want you to, and I'm going to end it here, the other thing I want you to consider, all of you, is just really please think about the trauma that we are experiencing right now. The reality, and I can't get away from this, is that moving like this is traumatic for us. The same way the community has fear, we have fear. There are many of us, and I have to speak for my fellow residents, who are saying they would rather be in the street than go to another hotel. They would rather go to the congregate shelter and risk COVID, because it's the fear of having to have a negative, be in a community where they get a negative backlash. That has been something that we've never really experienced. I know I haven't, in any type of situation moving throughout the shelter system. So as we make the policies and we do certain things, including adding programs, keep that in mind. We want to go into a place where we're treated like humans. We want to go into a place where there's programming and services that respects our humanity. We want to engage with the extra security in such a way that we know that they're there to secure us as well as the community. We're not homeless because we committed crimes, So we want to be able to be respected in that regard. And as we start to reimagine how to do things in this current climate, let's keep in mind, or let's try to work to make a more humane place for residents like myself, so that we can be more productive in any society that we go with. So, treatment for substance use is very important. Treatment for mental illness is very important. On-site, that's very important. A healthy and holistic environment is very important. We have this opportunity. If we're going to go, I do ask for more time to make sure all these different things are in place so that we can lessen the trauma. But I also ask that the community, that all of the stakeholders are able to work together to make this thing work the way that it would benefit all of us, especially those of us who are the most vulnerable and have often been voiceless. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Shams. I just wanted to say, just to add on, I want the whole community to be listening to exactly what he said. I think that you were spot on. Thank you so much.
I wanted to add a thank you also, Sham. That was really great and informative. Thank you.
And for those who were here beforehand, a short statement was read by Open Hearts at the last meeting. I did not ask them to come back because I thought it was more important to hear it from Shams than anyone else, and to understand no matter how arbitrary we believe the decision-making has been, and how much the community has not been included, apprised, informed, notified, all of it, it's worse for the men in the fact that they were not notified, informed, included, given a vote, given a voice. And I'm not going to stick up for Jocelyn, no offense intended, or Project Renewal or anybody else. Everyone on the chat who says the mayor, the mayor, the mayor, you know what? There's a link, call the mayor, because these men need people to speak up for them as well. So on that note,
I would like to
Jocelyn, yes.
Just a few. Tam was really enlightening and uplifting to hear from you. I think one of the things that you being here tonight humanizes those experiencing homelessness. You're not criminals. You're not here to really, and you've been moved multiple times. You want to make sure you're stabilized. We are looking to be able to get you to permanent housing, but just seeing you and hearing your voice, understanding the difficulty, how you're perceived, and the fear people have of you. You're a human. You showed us yourself. You have a voice. What you talked about really does resonate with me. We are making sure that the IT infrastructure and the needs that need to be in place before you are in place. I did hear you in terms of not having a voice for this to happen, but thinking about what your needs are and really putting out what your fears are when you go into a community really does resonate. And I thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Sorry, folks. I got family behind me talking to me. Okay. Next, we're going to open up the mic for Chris Marte. I know that Chris had to step out. I don't know if he's back yet. Chris, are you back? If Chris isn't back, we'll, kind of like coming back around the bend. John Fratta, who is the president of the board of directors of South Bridge Towers. John, you can unmute yourself. John Fratta, I know you're here. You were on earlier. All right, we'll come back for you as well. And I apologize. I'm sure I'm not going to get this right the first time around. Rashana Shah from PACE.
Yes, thank you, Tammy. Yes, my name is Rachna Shah. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations at Pace University. You heard last week from my colleague, Vanessa Herman, who is the AVP of Government and Community Relations. Unfortunately, she was triple booked tonight, but we would like to actually direct your attention to a letter that President Krislav of Pace University sent to the mayor. My colleague is going to be, Lindsay Owen is going to be putting that link into the chat. What I would also like to do is reiterate Vanessa's comments from last week. Unfortunately, we have seen a persistent uptake in complaints by our students about harassment that they are facing from a population of individuals down there. We've actually received additional complaints in the last week since the last meeting. Those are coming from residents in one of our residences of 182 Broadway. Again, we are working with the Downtown Alliance. We're working with BRC. We're working with NYPD on these issues. We do hope to establish a dialogue with Project Renewal to work with you if, should our issues come up. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming, and we definitely appreciate the work that PACE does with the amazing students in the community and the educators who are here, so thank you. Next would be Chris Brown. Chris has spoken before, so Chris goes next, and then we will circle back to see if Chris Marte or John Fratta are back. Okay, Chris?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for allowing us to have a platform to voice our concerns. I'm Chris with Downtown New Yorkers, and I just had a couple questions. First off, I'm still confused because my question last week was concerning, which was brought up in this meeting tonight, where will people be able to go to congregate, to smoke when they go outside? And I'm a little dismayed to hear that there's still no update on that or answer. That's one of our residents' major concerns. The streets are so narrow and small, which leads me to the fact of why was 52 William chosen? We don't feel like it's a good location. So with that said, I don't know if anyone, still has an answer for us on that, Jocelyn, but two other questions I just wanted to bring up is, does the city have a signed contract for services with the Radisson with Project Renewal? And also, is there any other signed contract obligating the city to pay for rooms at the Radisson, such as from the Hotel Association? And if so, with either one, could those contracts be made public to the community board and our elected officials? Thank you.
I think part of the question that I wanted to start with is our contract with the hotel is through the Hotel Association of New York and the city. That's where the contract is. At this point, there's no other contract for the Radisson, separate and apart from the Hotel Association to have the project renewal residents move there. The borough president does have a copy of the hotel contact and can share that for you to get direct information from them. And in terms of why this was chosen, I think the same answer I've given you Thursday of last week and earlier tonight, in terms of we have been using this space and it gives us the ability to have hopefully an adult family shelter as part of our Turning the Tide plan. So that is our plan. I did say earlier on, if there are other spaces in the neighborhood that you think it's better, you can certainly bring us those buildings. We will evaluate the appropriateness of them and take that into consideration.
Well, I just think it was really powerful for our neighbors to hear what Shams said. I mean, I'm so grateful he was on the call tonight. Thank you so much, Shams.
Shams actually has something else to say, Tammy. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I just think it was really powerful for all of our neighbors to hear that, because to hear, what a successful program, they have up there at the Lucerne, and it sounds like the site is doing very well now. And I don't know why, Jocelyn, 52 William you think is a better site than where they are at the Lucerne. It just doesn't seem like on paper at all that it is. And there's still no answer to our community on why that site is better than where they're located at the Lucerne.
I'm going to agree with you that I was so, for me to hear Sham directly talk about how he's perceived and the criminalization and the fears that the men have, to humanize who we're talking about, to really humanize what we're talking about. These are humans. And so I will end there. It really is services will continue. The provider has not changed. The services will continue. They're a high quality provider. They'll continue to provide services to the residents.
I'm on live.
Chris, so I just wanted to...
Chris, Shams, yeah, go Shams, thank you.
Yes, I wanted to answer your question about where would we go, recreation and stuff, which is a great question, especially the way you speak of the terrain. Now, with me, I'm also known as the homeless hero. So one of the things I do is I advocate for myself, I advocate for my fellow residents. And in doing so, I spent considerable amount of time talking to Charlie, who's the head of security for Project Renewal. I recently had a sit-down meeting with, a phone meeting with Jody. One of my biggest concerns, of course, was if we go there, will the services discontinue? I also talked to Corinne from Open Hearts. So what we've been doing behind the scenes is we've been forging relationships with people within the community that have shown interest in helping us navigate or transition to the community in a good way. What we were also doing is identifying places and making connections with Trinity Church for indoor things. It's going to get colder. So, there may be some indoor locations that we could take advantage of in terms of programs, maybe movie night and stuff like that. I haven't seen the hotel, so I don't know the layout of the hotel and if the hotel has rooms for that. Like here, we utilize the penthouse, which has a lot of space for us to do a lot of the programming. So those things are important. But I do know in the area, there are outdoor places like I believe Battery Park. I'm not sure of all of the parks that are there. What I've tried to do here is one of the things we did was the spiritual walk and talk. It's called Soulful Walk and Talks. And one of the reasons why we do is we try to create opportunities for engagement that may not be heavy-handed therapeutic programming, but it allows us to come together in a positive way with other people that can give us some type of inspiration or just be with us. You know, here on the Project Renewal's Recovery Center, we've done outings like picnics in Central Park and stuff. So these are like safe ways we can come together and we can see the community, be in the community without, you know, doing anything that is in violation of the good neighbor policy. So I think because we're having these conversations up here or in advance, we can actually identify these places, identify these support institutions like, say, Trinity Church, and then help with Kidon to develop programming that could facilitate that and keep those of us at the Lucerne engaged. Because, you know, sometimes boredom can get to you. You want to go outside, but, you know, it will look kind of weird if you got 100 people standing on one block. That's just not going to look right. But I know that I engage a lot. I walk around a lot, and whenever I see something, you know, I have a good rapport with most of the residents. It's easy for me to say, hey, come on, let's take a walk. Let's go to the park and stuff like that. So I'm interested in coming down beforehand and meeting somebody that can show me some of the things in the community, and maybe I can work with Project Renewal staff to try and identify how we could utilize certain spaces to make it a better situation for us as well as the community.
And Sham, there is space.
And we really appreciate your partnership for us and the community, because that kind of outreach and forward thinking is highly appreciated.
Thank you.
I want to move to Chris Marte and see if he's back, because I see, there he is. Chris, your turn.
Hey, Tammy. I said that they were going to set up a cab for the potential long-term shelter. Typically, cabs have been used to sidestep community boards, community input, make the process much less transparent. So my question is, when are they planning to set up this cab? Which voices of the community will be able to have a seat at that table? And what is the process of creating that cab once it becomes a long-term shelter?
Chris, that's a good question. We typically, once we get a provider, the provider has not been identified. If Project Renewal puts a proposal in, could be we don't know who the provider will be at that site once it goes to an adult family shelter. We go through the process of getting the shelter up and opened. And at that point, the shelter provider, whoever that person is, whoever that provider is, will then work with our IGA, which is our governmental affairs, part of our shop at Department of Social Services, as well as the community board leaders to establish the community advisory board. We do, and Leilani's on the chat, and she'll work with you all to help to develop that once we get to that part of the process. It is one of the things that we've done in the 40 shelters we've opened is to establish that, and they have gone pretty well.
Thank you, Chris.
My follow-up question, for the current cabs that you have for your long-term shelter, how regularly do they update the community board? Do they post or record their meetings online? Can you give us a little bit of confidence on the transparency of the ongoing meetings that you have now for some of these shelters?
They're run by the provider and our governmental affairs. I will have my folks send that to you, Tammy, so you can give that out. I can't say, because there's 40. I don't know how often they're quarterly. I don't know if they're recorded. I can't answer that, Chris. But Leilani and that staff will give you a general idea. We'll send that to you, Patricia and Tammy. But we do, part of our process is to establish that, and I believe they're quarterly. I don't know if they're recorded. I don't know what the medium is at this point, especially throughout what we're going through right now. So there'll be more to come in that.
Thank you.
Again, I'm beating a dead horse here. I understand that, but any siting of a shelter is even citing and awarding is arbitrary in terms of a process if you do not look at everything as required in fair share. Fair share analysis requires you looking at everything in the district, every service that's offered, every shelter that's here, everything. I don't hear any of that, and that is something that I just have to put it back in here. The exercise on the road to.
I'm going to just jump in really quickly. So we've articulated that for the permanent shelter, a fair share will be conducted in accordance with the obligations under the city charter. Jocelyn's mentioned that a couple of times this evening. And so the continuation to suggest that that's not going to happen is unfortunate because it's something that will happen. We are awaiting a proposal from a provider, and that proposal includes details that are necessary for the completion of a fair share and the analysis that's required under the city charter. So that will be conducted when a proposal has been received. In terms of the CAB, I just wanted to jump in because the CABs are overseen by my team. We have CABs that are established for all of the Turning the Tide shelters, as well as shelters, some of the shelters that have long been standing. The community advisory boards are established in partnership with the community board and our local elected officials and community stakeholders in terms of who is appointed to those CAB groups. When the first group meets, we coordinate the scheduling with the members of the CAB. When the shelter first opens, they tend to be monthly. And then we establish what an appropriate cadence of the meetings are. There are some times in which there aren't issues that need to be addressed by the CABs, and it's made an agreement that a meeting won't happen in a particular month. Once that regular cadence is established, those meetings are held, there's an agenda, and the members of the CAB participate in those meetings. If somebody were to no longer be involved in the CAB, we work to find a replacement. This is really about community engagement, about the site-specific activities that are occurring in partnership with the provider who, as Jocelyn mentioned, hosts those CAB meetings. So that will take place. In the meantime, as we've done with many of the temporary sites being utilized for our COVID use, we are committed to having regular and ongoing meetings with Project Renewal about the temporary use of this location.
So Erin, who has just jumped in, was not on the call publicly, speaking last week. And Erin, if you don't mind introducing yourself, even though you just muted yourself.
My apologies. Erin Drinkwater, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Social Services for Intergovernmental and Legislative Affairs.
So if people are looking for the chain, because I do see comments in the chain of who is Erin and how does she fit into this, I believe Jocelyn works for Erin. So if that gives an information.
Hold on. Sorry, Tammy. No. I am
the other way around. Erin works for Jocelyn.
It's a social services. It's a very interesting setup. But DSS, Department of Social Services, comprised of the Department of Homeless Services and HRA, Human Resource Administration, Administration for HRA, and Administrator for DHS. And then Erin is in the part of the middle DSS that supports both of those agencies. So we all work for the Commissioner of Banks.
Yeah, well, about that, and you all work for the mayor, there's been lots of conferences. We have asked many times for the mayor's office to join us this evening, to join us any evening to explain directly what's been happening. We've had no participation from the mayor's office, no answers from the mayor's office. So I hope that answers the question of that is in the chat of where is the mayor on all this? I think you just see what you see. For the last person who asked about our elected officials, every one of our elected officials has been on this call last week and this week, and we are very grateful for their support of the people at the mission itself, at the shelter itself, and we're so grateful for their support here. I'm going to go back and see if John Fratta, the president and director, the board of directors for Southbridge Towers.
Yes. We have 15 minutes.
Yep. And if he is not, we're going directly to our community board members who have hands up and anyone else who is a panelist with hands up. Okay, so let's see where we go. We're going to start with Mariama. James? Mariama, can you unmute?
Yep. Hi. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you again to the electeds that appeared. And my comment is right on time with yours, because I was going to say that it's really a shame that, again, the mayor's office is not here. He has not even had the decency or respect to send a deputy or the mayor's office of constituent services. Department of Social Services and Department of Homeless Services is not who made this decision. City Hall made this decision, and City Hall should come here to represent and stand by whatever their decision. They have a responsibility to respond to their constituents, and this is really disgusting. That said, the reason I'd really like to see him and to have an opportunity to have his ear on this is because the appearance is that he has complete deference for health concerns with regard to this unnecessary move during a pandemic. It should not be happening if it's not an emergency. Should not be happening. We can go into the fact of whether it's the right location, and I personally don't believe it is either. But before we get there, I think we need to address the issue that people are moved off the streets and into shelters as they're able during a pandemic. That's been the guideline. And then they should stay put. And people who are in homes similarly should stay put. That's why there's been a moratorium on evictions. It's not just because the government necessarily wants to do that for us and to put landlords potentially in a pinch. It's because people should not be moving around and losing their housing at this point. So if the Lucerne gentlemen are happy and healthy where they are, and there's been accommodations made for them to remain that way. They've been given outdoor space. They've been given spaces within the building to congregate and to be active and to exercise. And the community has at this point welcomed them and become comfortable and settled in with them as well. And they have a potential to have jobs, we learned from the borough president last week and from Corrine, who represented Upper West Side Open Hearts. They have an opportunity to work and to do other things there. And if Project Renewal is not going to be impacted, they're going to be safe and fine in either case, whether the center is moved down here or remains uptown. Why on earth, during a pandemic, are you putting people's mental and emotional and physical health at risk? It is outrageous. And that's all I want to say. Thank you, Tommy, for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Mariana. One of the things that we have talked about throughout this hour and a half is establishing that the men will be receiving the same services in the space, that they will have the opportunity to get training. They'll have the opportunity to continue with the same provider. And so it is hopeful that the way the community was able to find folks to be welcoming, that we can repeat this in the FIDI area.
But we learned last week that a space had been built for them specifically to be able to have outdoor space and things, and that the jobs that were being provided to them, they could not take downtown. They would lose if they moved downtown. So it really doesn't make any sense. But the health of these men and of people in our area during a pandemic, people in our area, who many of which have more than one cancer, upper and lower respiratory diseases. We are vulnerable here just as they are vulnerable there. You put these two vulnerable communities together in the midst of a pandemic when the state of New York has different districts every day popping up with the COVID back on the rise. Why are you doing this? Do we have to call upon our federal electeds to become involved too, to try to stop this?
Mariama, I think any advocacy that can be done for Shams and the group of men should be done for everyone, because they are still residents of our city. And yes, call. I mean, They are residents, and I do not accept the idea that those 50 jobs, so sorry, we'll give them to someone else. That's actually not the way we work in the United States. I think if you get hired for a job and you move, you lose the job. And yes, they have to, but having jobs secured for this group of men and saying that it's okay, we'll move it to the next group of men, does not value the group of men for who they are.
I mean,
these jobs were for them.
I said, I didn't say anything about jobs, move on. I said the money that was raised for the services uptown, we have clients up there. If there are jobs up there, certainly Project Renewal will continue to work to help them to continue maintain their employment. So, you know, let's differentiate that.
Gail Brewer has already said that those jobs would be lost.
Hold on, Tammy. The money that was raised in the Upper West Side that last week, we learned, and when we, you know, cannot come down because it's Goddard Riverside and the Upper West Side, that will continue in the Upper West Side for all of the folks who are experiencing homelessness who are up there. If there's employment, that opportunities that the men can continue to have, we certainly want them to continue to have that. And the provider here will continue to make them connections for them to find employment and get training. The provider is not changing. The provider will continue to provide the services. Every man that is in the shelter, every resident has an individual living plan that look at what their service needs are. And if they're ready for employment, they will help them to make those connections to find employment. So it's not that
okay, Jocelyn, let's go to, I know you are on a timeline. We have 8 minutes and six more hands. Andrew?
Yeah, mine may be very quick, Tammy, and apologies if it's already been asked and answered, and if it has, just say so and I'll find out later. But in terms of the security staffing, will that all be in place by the time the 235 residents are relocated to the Radisson?
Yes.
Jody or Eric?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Rosa,
John Fratter back?
Chang, and I don't see him back. So actually, you know what? We'll go to Rosa before you. I apologize. We're going to do Patrick from the Side-Eye Neighbors Association.
Thanks, Tammy. And I echo a lot of the frustration and outrage that Mariama has expressed. You know, during last week's call, I feel like I learned a lot more about what's really going on here when the Project Renewal folks stayed on with us and answered some questions afterwards. For example, I found out that Project Renewal wasn't even made aware of this decision until 5 p.m. on Friday the 25th, shortly before the news was announced to the public, which tells me that this decision was both made and announced before you ever even bothered to let your contractual service provider, your partner know. And that tells me that this can only be one thing. It was a political calculation and a political decision by the mayor and nothing more. This isn't about de-densification. This isn't about redistribution. This is about simply nothing more than a political calculation made by this mayor. And so I think it's unfair that the mayor himself or that someone from the office of the mayor isn't here to defend that political decision, to explain that political decision, and it's outrageous. Jocelyn, for you, a question to follow up from last week. You referred to a review that was done by the mayor, which we now know is nothing more than a political calculation. But in fairness, you did refer to a review that was done by the mayor. I know Vanessa from PACE asked for a copy of it. I, on behalf of the Florida Neighborhood Association and others, asked for a copy of it. I don't believe it's been produced to the community board. Certainly, I haven't seen a copy of it in the meantime. Is that available?
Patrick, what I said last week, and I'll repeat here, is that the mayor asked the review to be done by the law department. And so the law department, at the request of the mayor, did the review along with my boss. And so that is where that's where the review was done. In terms of a copy of it, I do not have it. I'll refer you to.
You don't have it? You don't have it. It's not been produced. We requested it last week, but it's not being produced, right?
I'm referring you and Tammy and Patricia to the law department.
All right. Well, because I anticipated that, we put in a formal request. Hopefully that'll be responded to. I think that's completely unfair to try to do that. One more quick question, if I may. You know, I also learned that from the project renewal folks who were thankfully forthcoming with us, it takes them about 4 weeks or so, they said, to get themselves up and running. And so if they didn't find out until October the 25th, the earliest they can possibly be ready would be the end of October or early November. And so I want to come back to a question that was asked earlier, and it's why the rush? You know, we heard from Shams himself, who said the same thing. Shams and his fellow residents, they don't want to be redistributed. They want to stay where they are. So if this political calculation has been made, again, why the rush? Tammy asked it earlier and you didn't directly answer the question. Why the rush?
Jocelyn, you're on mute.
Don't take that personally, Patrick. One of the things that we in listening to Project Renewal is we did push the date back. So the week of the 19th, we are working to get the building ready. Project Renewal is in with us doing that. Sham talked about the IT infrastructure and the needs there, learning from what happened. We're working to get those needs met. We're working to get the IT infrastructure in place. We're working to have the building ready. And so we did push the date back. You know, I am sure that, you know, the September 25th a date on the Project Renewal, you know, that's when they found out. But since that date to now, we have made multiple strides in getting that building ready. The building, whatever the needs are, we have worked to meet those needs. And so we are not going to be moving into a building.
What's the hurry? That's the question. Not what's been done. What's the hurry? Why the hurry?
I disagree that there's a hurry, Patrick, respectfully. We have been working, we pushed the date back. The opportunity to have the building ready is what we're doing. We intend to have the building ready before the men are transferred the week of the 19th.
Sorry, Jocelyn, I think that's what he's referring to is why did you use the emergency move measures, which made it so that there was no, you know, there was no actual listening to the community, et cetera. Because I mean, what Shams is saying is actually, you know, what we all need to hear. And actually, I'm in love with Shams now, and I'm like actually thinking like how awesome it would be. But like I do think that I want to just say that, you know, one of the things that we need to consider is what he's saying, and what Patrick is asking is just why we're, you know, why the emergency measures, why was it so that we circumvented all of the community input. Like what Shams was saying was very true. Like, you know, there if you're rushed into a community, there's none of the community building that needs to happen before folks can actually provide the services that are needed. So I just wanted to actually put that, you know, just because I didn't want this to be continuous of the questions.
And I'm going to tag on because
I hear you.
Assemblymember Patrick, thank you, Jocelyn. Hold on, when you're answering that, Project Renewal found out the 25th. They told us on the call, and the conversation was their first visit to the location was last week. When they were on the call on the 1st, they had just viewed the location. There were people still living there last week as part of quarantine in the beginning. So what you're saying to move them the 19th actually gives, they had said it takes 3 to 4 weeks to do a move. That gives them 2 to 2.5. So this is part of why the rush. In the immediate, you're saying it was pushed back, but even to push it back 2 weeks, because the mayor had announced October 5th, pushing it back 2 weeks still seems a complete rush. So it's about why now, why October, why now, why not a longer term plan to give people the full opportunity. So Project Renewal is fully staffed. They've figured out all the questions. They have a way to establish an open heart. Why 2 weeks?
Plus you're gonna move them again to make an adult shelter. This makes no sense.
Sorry, that's one of my board members obviously having a meltdown from not understanding why this makes no sense. Sorry, Jocelyn, you're.
I was Just going to comment, and Project Renewal is on the call, Eric and Jody. We've been in regular communication with them. We continue to have the open lines of dialogue. We have gotten from Project Renewal what their needs are. We are working to meet those needs. Project Renewal has been lockstep. We'll continue to do that. So it's not a, we're doing this without Project Renewal's input. This is, it's a situation that things happen very quickly, and we're working with the provider to make sure that their needs are met and make sure that whatever infrastructure needs to be there, whatever hiring needs to happen, that happens. It is not.
Why is the need happening so quickly? What precipitated the need?
I am going to actually say that I disagree with the idea it's a rush. We have been talking since the 25th. We've been looking at what the need is. We anticipated that we had to change the 5th that was announced. We moved it not to the 12th, but the week of the 19th. We have that entire week. So it is not a, from my perspective, and I think we can agree to disagree in terms of this is a rush or not. I respectfully disagree with that. And so it is, working with Project Renewal, working with community stakeholders, Department of Homeless Services, and certainly the men who I hope would be welcomed into your community. I hope they would not, like Sham described, really feel fearful for themselves. And so I am going to really put that out to all of you in this call, to really recognize that the folks who are coming are humans and that they are not criminalized. As I said last week, these are folks. And
Jocelyn, we know, and
I'm sorry,
Jocelyn, we have 3 more questions. That's okay. We have 3 more hands up so we're going to recognize 3 others. I understand we're trying to go as quickly as we can. This is a hot topic. I know you have another place to go, but I think this is the fastest I can do it. If you can be more succinct in your answer, that would be great. Rosa.
Thank you, Tammy.
Rosa Chang, you're welcome.
Thank you. Shams, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and actually meet with us, to engage with the community members and discuss something that, as you can tell from the conversation, many people in our community are very fearful of. So thank you for your bravery, frankly, in facing us, which is especially clear in comparison to the mayor's absolute cowardliness in refusing to meet with us.
Thank you.
Jocelyn and Aaron, why do you have to needlessly traumatize Shams and his neighbors and remove him from a supportive environment? More specifically, from the supportive friendships and the human connections that he has developed, and that I think are very, very hard fought for on the Upper West Side, and which will be difficult to replicate here. And there will definitely be some trauma in getting to that point. I am hopeful that if this happens, that we will be able to do that. But it's not something that you can guarantee, and you are absolutely removing him from that. This is the definition of destabilizing and triggering for an already vulnerable population, which we all agree that Shams and his fellow residents are. So why are you, as Mariama put it very succinctly, why are you putting these men at further risk for both physical and mental safety?
I believe I've answered that question, Tammy, but Rosa,
I really believe you have not.
Rosa, that you said you hope that the men will be respected when they come, but we will provide the same services. We have the opportunity, like I talked about, to have a shelter that would be for adult families in this area. And so we're able to, really move towards that.
You are removing them from something that's incredibly unique.
I have to get in another call.
Okay.
Rosa, I'm gonna stop you there. Thank you, Rosa. Andrew, from the mayor's office, welcome to the fray. I am not going to call on Justine and Bob yet because I'd like Andrew to speak on behalf of the mayor's office. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the invitation coming to me this afternoon. I was not able to speak with my agency partners and the mayor himself. to have a statement prepared for this meeting in such short time, but we are here, and everything that you guys are saying is going to be taken back to our office and shared with our team, and will be used to make further policy decisions. But we are here, and we are listening to what the community has to say, and all of this will be taken back to the administration and be used to help making policy decisions in the future.
Andrew, I've heard you say that at previous CB meetings, and I have not seen you come back with any actual answers, and it's been incredibly frustrating.
Again, I was going to ask if you could guarantee us that you were going to come back at a specific date with at least an answer to why this process has been so rushed.
And before the 19th.
What I am prepared to do is bring your concerns back to the mayor and have them be used to affect policy changes and decisions going forward.
Andrew, I appreciate that response. Please don't take it the wrong way when I say repeating the same answer doesn't satisfy the community. We've learned that with the dialogue, unfortunately for Jocelyn and Erin, repeating the same answers that the community is railing about does not actually assuage the community, does not make the community feel that they have been heard, listened to, or considered. It just makes them more irate. So
Also, it's not.
Appreciate. Go ahead, Pat.
Sorry, it's not policy decisions in the future we're concerned about. It's this decision. It is this specific move that we are discussing.
And even to put a finer point on that with where Pat is going, it is the decisions that are being done during the emergency order that do not seem to be emergency driven related at all that we would like a definite answer to about this decision and about the DSS planning process being more than arbitrary, because this seems very arbitrary. It's basically more of a hollow exercise on the road to benefiting a political ally of the mayor than anything having to do with the safety and welfare of the men in that shelter. Or, quite frankly, having anything to do to improve the lives of finding and working with the community to site a shelter for the people who live on the streets in Community Board 1. So,
Tammy, I need to jump in. I know that the answers that you talked about that I gave, same answers. I think we're getting the same questions. So I am going to really end the meeting, letting you know that we have heard your questions, done our best to answer them. I know the answers are not fulfilling. I know the answers are not what you want to hear. I know the answers can be hard. I know the decision that was made is difficult. I thank you all. I have to run to another meeting tonight. I appreciate your time. The move is planned for October 19th. And so it is, my hope is that when the men do come to FIDI, that they are given some opportunities to be seen as human, and that there is some aspect of folks who says, these are people too, just like you and me. So I'm going to end.
I think that's unfair. That's an unfair way to end, because we have first and foremost said that we believe the way you are treating these men is unfair. So that is a terrible characterization to end on for Community Board 1. And I cannot let that stand as your last comment.
Sam and his group a lawyer.
And I think we've answered the questions that you've asked us. And so,
you have not. You have danced around them. You have not answered the questions, which is why we keep asking them.
Rosa.
Yeah, let Tammy run the meeting, please, Rosa.
This is Leilani. What I also ask, just want to jump in, that I work with you all on a daily basis. If there's any outstanding questions, please email them. I'm happy to provide responses to you all in the interim as well.
I think, Leilani, some of the issue is we're still not getting the answers that we've asked for to start with. There still is not a solid answer as to why this decision was made. This does not fall under de-densification in any stance. we appreciate, the partnership that we have worked with you on and DHS to try and work together. This whole situation is dehumanizing for the people in that shelter, destabilizing, unfair. The process is rushed because if it takes 3 to 4 weeks, making an announcement, doing it in 2.5 without even having the consideration for better locations, and there are better locations in CB1. We have talked about that before. The non-recognition of the private providers is disconcerting to us by all of the quote unquote fact sheets that your organization has sent to us does not include any of it, and continually saying that we don't have any shelters down here, we don't have anything is annoying.
Tammy, respectfully,
The mayor's
Administrator
the mayor's
Carter,
office has to, the mayor's office will answer hopefully some questions, but when we look forward, we hope for a different process than this that is not done under the emergency orders. We look forward to trying to support Shams and the people there. And we already have neighbors from the community who are working with open hearts because we are a compassionate community. That doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that's going on. We don't agree with how you're doing it, how you're treating them. We are still doing what we do as a compassionate community, but this dialogue is never going to be resolved by here because none of you made the decision. The Hotel Association should have spoken to anybody in the community. They're looking at real estate deals. People are not real estate deals. This is not fair. I know the administrator has to jump off. I recognize that, and that is fine. I think Project Renewal has updated their information about all of the services that they offer and things like that. If they want to hang on for a minute or two for 5 to 10 minutes to any other remaining operational questions or onboarding questions, getting set up questions, that would be greatly appreciated if those come through. And
thank you, Tammy.
I thank you for your time. I appreciate the time for both you, Aaron, and the rest of your team.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I know that if Project Renewal, I do still see Jody and Eric. Bob Schneck, you had a hand up, and Dr. Betty Kay had a hand up. I apologize, but Leilani is also still here, who has been a good partner working with us. We've just lost Jocelyn and Aaron, which is fine. Okay, so I'm going to go to Bob and then Betty and then Justine, and I'm looking through the chat to see if there's any questions. Again, we have 10 minutes for this, so please be succinct.
Okay, what I wanted to say is that I love and respect Shams, and I really want to be one of the people that welcome him and his community to our neighborhood. I think that's really important. And I think one of the things I learned from him is the idea of homework. If you have a family, you'd never move them into a house without showing the kids what it is. I mean, it's unbelievable that you don't even, there are so many steps here that aren't, if you really are humanizing the process, you have to humanize it. For Jocelyn to act as though she's shocked to have Shams involved, I think this whole process should begin with the engagement of people like Shams and some of his partners, his colleagues. I mean, the important thing is to really, if we're engaging communities, we have to engage communities. So why in heaven's name can't they come down here and meet us in advance of these things? They can come to a quality of life meeting, or a couple of them anyway. They should, because they're part of this process. They should be engaged. What engagement means is meeting with the people. And so all of this, when we're talking about how this really isn't getting to the heart of anything, what this is mayoral double talk. And what these people have jobs and they have to defend the mayor, but that isn't what I have to do. My job is to be a human being and look after other human beings. And I think that there's lots of homework that we need to do here, lots of engagement, and we really should think about how can the community board, for example, help to welcome the people of this, the people that
that's a next step, and we will be working on that. Okay, and we will be working with Project Renewal. That is a dialogue with Project Renewal.
The other general point I wanted to make, and one of the things I've been working on lately is structural racism. And I think that that's really an important problem.
Bob, not tonight.
Wait,
tonight on this
you're
call.
intercepting this before I make the point. What I'm saying is there's also structural bias against homeless people. And that what happens is that often when I pass these persons, I'm threatened by them. Some of them really are dangerous. They're dangerous to me, they're dangerous to other people who I'm with. And if I'm with kids, they're really frightened of these guys. So we have to really treat that structural racism as something serious as part of the homework. We really have to think about how we can humanize communities in advance of this stuff and how we can, of these confrontations, so that they're not confrontations, so that they're actually emerging together of people.
Bob, eventually in Community Board 1 and across the city, homelessness will have a massive variety of faces, because if you take a look and think for every person who's ever been to a theater, who's ever been to a Broadway show, it's every usher, every person who sold you a ticket, took your tickets, anyone who plays music, anyone who operates the lights, the sound, the actors,
Works in a restaurant.
they're all unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
Works in a restaurant. I mean, how many restaurants and stores have we lost down here? Century 21, thousands of people who work there, the subsidiary restaurant. Yes, we all know homelessness is a sad reality of where we are, and it has many faces. So Bob, I hear you, but yeah.
But
All
I
right.
think that
Next,
the key step is actually
Bob, you're getting muting.
It's okay.
I'm muting you, Bob.
Okay.
All right, Justine.
Thank you. All right. So no, first of all, I want to say
It's a
I'm on
question for Project Renewal.
It's a question. It's a comment and it's a question, because I think that what everybody has said previously to this point, Patrick, Mariama, it's all used, and we're talking about the motives behind the decision, but clearly it's a cynical political move by the mayor. And while I respectfully disagree, is whether the motives behind this discussion are important at this point. It really should be the decision that falls or stands on the merits. And they're not talking about the merits, because the merits of this decision that argue for keeping the men in where they are at the Lucerne. They've got procedures in place to take care of them. They've got jobs up there. They are comfortable there. Sham has been very clear that he wants to stay there and his folks want to stay there. All that said, this is not a perfect world. They're going to be moved here. Jocelyn said clearly the 19th they're here. So that brings me to plan C, basically, and kind of goes to what Bob Schneck was talking about. What are we going to do in our neighborhood to welcome them? And I know you said it's a different conversation or a different time. That's fine. But I want to say right now that I think there are many people in this neighborhood that
Justine, that's a dialogue. That's a dialogue we will do with Project Renewal as the lead for how to make this work.
Perfect.
Because we do not operate their building. We have to work with them.
But
They are the managers of the building.
I would also like to work with Open Hearts, because I thought what Corinne said last time was so moving to me. I think that while it infuriated me that Jocelyn
that's happening.
Basically you, the community, take care of these people because it's not our job. It's not our problem. We made a bad decision. Anyway, I know, I hear you, I'm shutting up, but thank you.
It's happening, and Open Hearts is forming in FIDI. I am not a part of Open Hearts. This is my community hat that I'm wearing right now.
Fine.
And if anybody wants to join Open Hearts,
let's talk about it.
They're welcome to do so to move this forward. But we first have to get past this step.
Got it. Could we share that information on our community board page, or someone share with me and let me know how to do that? Because I don't know and I'd like to be involved.
All of it will go to Pat as the chair of Quality of Life. Jill, you have to wait. There are two hands up.
It's 20 after.
Betty. Yep, I'm going as quick as I can, trying to cut people off. Betty, you're next.
Thanks. I'm going to talk to Project Renewal and you, Shams, too. Politics drive me a little crazy and seem very edgy. So I want this to end with, I moved here a few years ago with a disability as an older person, and I know what it's like to be treated like a freak. Everyone kind of treat you hands at length. And I want you to leave this more with, you're very welcome. And I hope you feel that. And you can see the Statue of Liberty. As we like to say, Community Board won because we're number one. So don't regret or fear coming here. This tone isn't the way it usually is. This is because people are pissed off with the mayor. And I hope the advocacy is seen as a positive by you and by the agency, by all means. But welcome and look forward to seeing you. And if I can do it, you can do it.
And yes, welcome. That's the biggest key.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Betty. All right, let's, next is Jill Goodkind. Jill, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, this is a question for Project Renewal. Is the quality services, the overall picture at the Radisson less than what's currently at the Lucerne? In other words, are they moving to a place where they're getting less?
I'll start and Jody can finish. One way in which the Radisson is actually an improvement for some of the men is that at the Lucerne, about half the population are sharing rooms. They're doubled up. In the Radisson, everyone will get their own room. There is more internal space at the Radisson for programming than we had at the Lucerne, which is why the external space from Goddard Riverside was such an important feature. We think the inside of the hotel will function quite well. Most of our concerns are really about what will happen outside the physical envelope of the hotel. Jody, do you have anything more you want to?
You've virtually said it all. I'll just say very briefly, we expect to be able to transfer the full scope of services that Project Renewal provides to the Radisson environment. But you've heard, I think, quite eloquently through the course of the evening that there are ancillary supports that the community provides on the Upper West Side. And obviously rebuilding, as Gail Brewer famously said, I think we've lost the support from Goddard Riverside in the day programming and the offer to employ 50 of our clients in a kind of street cleaning capacity. That clearly was very specific to the Upper West Side. And I think there's an open question about the extent to which we can rebuild some of these ancillary community supports, like the tremendous support from the Open Hearts Initiative. But from a Project Renewal scope of services, we're going to be able to replicate it downtown.
But for the quality of life for the gentlemen who are at the Lucerne, it is not going to be necessarily a better quality of life at the Radisson, so to speak.
Jams.
From what I know, and like I said, I sat down with Jody, and so we went over some things and some of the concerns I had, because those are my concerns as well, to make sure that the transfer would allow for us to still benefit in the way that we did here. Like Eric said, the fact of us having separate rooms is really a good thing. That will lessen a lot and provide a better living ability. So that's a really good thing. Now I'm hearing about the layout providing more space, which with that in place, I'm sure we can set the program. Now, as far as like the other programs outside of what Project Renewal also does, I deal regularly with Open Hearts here. And they have committed to actually come there and provide a lot of the same services there as they have been doing over here at the Lucerne. In addition to that, I expect that we will increase some of the services. I don't want to talk for Project Renewal, but just based on my conversation, I expect that we will increase some of the services provided by their recovery center, which works very well with us and was one of the initial programs that we brought in. That's the outpatient group that Project Renewal has. So I think that collectively between Open Hearts, Upper West Side, and the Friends of Fitty, along with Project Renewal's already in place services, I think we'll be all right. My only real major concern at this point is the amount of time for the infrastructure to be set up. That is the only real thing that could cause a major problem for us in terms of coming into it too soon. But outside of that, if they're given enough time to get their infrastructure and their IT structure straight and put together a good workable program, I think we'll be fine. And I'm talking to people down there in Fitty, and I'm becoming more confident that we'll have a good experience there, a great experience there.
Well, again, we are excited that Open Hearts FIDI has started, because the working with Open Hearts for the Upper West Side will help the transition for you. And we're sad that you have to make the transition when it's not one that you want. We're even sadder that what we're talking about is also not options for anybody on the streets that we have in Lower Manhattan, which you and I have talked about that, I think, before. And I talked to Project Renewal about this, because we've got a lot of people on the streets already in Lower Manhattan, and it grows every day. And none of these options are open for that. So that's another long-term dialogue. Okay, I think Sarah Cassell, I know I cut you off before. Sarah, do you have any other questions for Project Renewal? And I agree with whoever said in the anonymous, Project Renewal should hire Shams as an outreach coordinator, because he's pretty awesome advocate. So, and I want to read that into the public record, because I think that would be really cool. All righty, Sarah.
Earlier outburst, because I'm just so mad. And honestly, Shams, if has anyone said, I mean, we keep reading about the lawsuit up there. Has anyone offered you and your cohort pro bono legal services?
No, not yet, unfortunately.
Okay, interesting. Okay, again, something to think about. Thank you. And again, I apologize. On your behalf, I'm so irate. The fact that you're moving here and then they're going to move you again drives me nuts.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that is most overlooked, and is one of the things that makes me frustrated in this process, because it's not, for me, it's not only about your move to FIDI, it's everyone's thriving to start with, and the losing of potential job opportunities that were garnered for all of you. And the knowledge that this will be, I think, your fourth move, and then you will get moved again. So it's, I don't know anybody else who's moved 5 times in under 6 months, but having moved a couple times, it's hard. It ain't fun. All right, I don't have any other hands. I apologize to those who are on the attendee Zoom who have hands up, but we are not calling on the public in general to speak at this. I have had many questions sent to me by a variety of residents. We've tried to include them all. And I think we've gotten almost everything about Jody and the onboarding. Jody, can you confirm, or Eric, that you will have all your staff ready to go, available for everybody on the 19th?
So I'm seeing this question in the chat too, and I may have to turn to my colleagues, Katie and Kadon. Eric and I just affirmed about 15 minutes ago that we would have our full security staff in place. There is a specific line called engagement specialist. We have several of those people currently in place. The city has allowed us to hire an additional 4. And I know we're in the process of onboarding some of them, but I don't believe we will have them all onboarded by the 19th. And this is special supplemental staff. Katie and Kadon, do you have any additional insight into the timeline for those 4 engagement specialists? And other than that, the answer is yes across the board. We will have our staff in place. Katie, Kadon.
Sure. There's an additional 5 staff. So this is new staff that's being hired. So they're not at the Lucerne. They'll be coming with us to the Radisson, and there'll be 3 on board by the 19th, and the two additional should be on within the next week.
Okay, but the people the people who have been working with the men at the Lucerne, are they moving with the group?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Kadon's nodding. Okay, that's like so important for relationship building that I can't even, it pops my brain that, okay, good. All right, that's fine. Do you know what happens to the hotel staff who is currently employed at the location. Are they there then providing the housekeeping services and at front desk and security, or have the entire staff from the hotel needed to be laid off?
I'm sorry, the Lucerne Hotel?
Both actually no, from the Radisson, because the Radisson is currently operational.
So the Radisson
It's a quarantine hotel.
Understood. The Radisson staff will be providing maintenance services for our clients when they transition to the Radisson. So our maintenance team is the Third Street Shelter has an independent maintenance team, as does Kenton Hall. Neither of those maintenance teams will be traveling with us to the Radisson. The Radisson's maintenance staff will be managing the hotel.
And the maintenance staff at the Lucerne was the Lucerne maintenance staff?
Correct.
Okay. And by maintenance, does that also include housekeeping?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. But
No,
that does
something
not include front office staff, because that's a part of hotel guest room, correct?
There were front desk staff also at the Lucerne that were.
And will there be front desk staff that are, I'm just trying to get my head around layoffs. I understand where I'm going, because part of the move process is additional people who are laid off during the move or displaced.
I think, please, Shirley.
Go ahead, Kate, on.
So I think it'd be best to, get confirmation from the Radisson themselves. But my understanding is as a isolation site, there were fewer staff from the Radisson than there will be now as we are occupying the facility as a de-densifying site.
And I don't think we know what the impact of our departure will be relative to Lucerne staff, but I can say that at least one person employed by the Lucerne has come to us off the record anecdotally concerned about the longevity of his role. So I imagine there's some of that going on. We just don't have access to the specifics.
Sure.
And I don't know the specifics, but I do know the friend that connected me to Upper West Side Open Hearts Initiative, the friend through whom I met that organization, lives on 111th Street, and said that this program and Project Renewal and what's been going on there has kept the Lucerne afloat. So that's one of the concerns of Upper West Siders that are in support of the gentleman remaining as well.
Exactly.
And then I just want to jump in. I don't think we've ever discussed food services, have we, at 52 William?
So
that was going to be my next question, because there is a restaurant with a liquor license in that building as well. So that was going to be my next question. Thank you.
The restaurant space is being taken over by Project Renewal to actually use as the entrance and security lobby of the hotel, and all of the liquor will be removed. We operate a social purpose enterprise called City Beat Kitchens that actually makes and delivers about 3 million meals a year to homeless New Yorkers throughout the city. And City Beat Kitchens will be providing the meals to the clients at the Lucerne. They'll be delivering individually packaged meals, 3 times a day, that will be brought by the residential aides to each client's room. So that's how food service will happen.
There's no communal dining?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Did you say the food is, so the food is not prepared on site? The food is brought to, delivered to
in our commercial kitchens.
Right, okay.
And do you need to do it? Is there a potential for additional hiring for people in the commercial kitchens?
You're very funny.
We operate a culinary arts training program. It's a 6-month program where many of our clients, it gives them food handler certification.
What do I eat at snack time?
Tiffany, please.
Tiffany, yeah. Tiffany, mute yourself.
I got her. I got her. She's muted.
Over 50 of our employees at City Beat Kitchens are actually graduates of our culinary arts training program. There won't be additional hiring for the Radisson because it's the same people who are getting food service at the Lucerne. But we're thrilled to be able to offer continued employment in a sector where thousands of people have been laid off and lost their jobs.
Right, right.
Yeah.
If
There's a question in.
Eric hadn't finished.
I was just going to put in a plug. Before the pandemic, City Bee Kitchens actually was also an event catering business that does weddings and bar mitzvahs. So when this is all over,
There you go. I love that. Can you confirm which entrance to the hotel you'll be using as a primary entrance and exit?
I think, well, Charlie and Jody, have we actually worked all that out yet?
Charlie?
Yes, it's also the entrance on William Street, just nearer to the corner.
So it's
not
through the
Pine Street.
It's
Correct,
through the
no.
restaurant on William Street.
Right, not on Pine.
Okay, thank you. And then I know this question was not for you, Jody. Someone asked how hard it is to obtain and how long it would take to replace the 50 jobs that Borough President Brewer had worked with, I think it was Goddard Riverside, to offer the programs to the participants. I mean, it seemed like a gift from God, and I don't, quite frankly, don't know how to get that replicated.
So
yeah, Goddard was able to secure, I think, upwards of a $200,000 donation to support this programming. And it would take us a number of weeks to ramp it up. But if we had those ingredients, we could probably make something happen.
And those jobs were community beautification. It was they were going to be working with the Greenkeepers program at Goddard to actually do street cleaning and beautification around specific blocks on the Upper West Side.
I see Shams.
Yeah, I was told that the amount of money Gil Brewer had brought out was $500,000 at this point. What I was gonna say is that, behind the scenes, I was trying to see if we still could make that money available to service us, or even a portion of it in what we do at the residents and stuff like that, because that was a good idea. But the other thing is that I am speaking to a number of people in the Fitty district who are saying that they definitely would like to know what it is that we need and what it is that they can do, and they're more than willing to help us to secure basically the same type of services and situations that we had. We just have to have more dialogue and bring them into the discussion.
I want to jump in for a second also. So isn't it possible for the residents of Lucerne, now 52 William Street, to travel back to the Upper West Side on a daily basis to pursue those job opportunities?
I don't see why not. I mean, we still need jobs, and if if they wanted to help us, because this is about, so I would assume the residents of the Lucerne, and considering what we've been going through, I think that's why God had stepped up. We could still do that. That could be good for some of us that are ready to work. I would definitely love to be a part of that.
I mean, maybe we, Tammy, maybe we can reach out to Borough President Brewer and find out.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And just to clarify with Charlie and others as more questions, the Bailey restaurant has a dual entrance, one on Pine and one on South William that goes, it's also connected, a little further down the street from the main entrance to the hotel, which has a revolving door. So if I understand correctly, all entrances will be monitored through William Street, not through the Pine Street side, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And then there are lots of local churches in the area, which would be great. Shams, you were talking about, the walks and things. In the comments, one of our people has said that Father Murphy is the pastor of Our Lady of Victory Catholic Church, which is on the corner of William and Pine. So that could be a really nice connection for you. I will tell you that Trinity has an incredible resource of that we'd be happy to get you hooked up with as well for people who are looking for those things. And Jody and Eric, if you need, and Kaden, if you need a connection there, we can connect you directly with those those places in our community. I think everyone else, we've gotten all the quality of life questions I think that have been asked. I'm quickly streaming through to see if there's any. Thank you for answering all the onboarding questions. I think that's it. I know that just for everybody who is on the call, we will have a wind-up conversation about this at the Community Board 1 Executive Committee meeting, which is the 21st. The Quality of Life meeting this month is the 22nd. It is the same night, yes, as the next debates. So you can choose Quality of Life and Community Board 1 or a debate to watch, or maybe both, depending on how fast they go. And with that, Pat, do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I just want to say again, Sham, we will do everything we can to make the transition as easy as we can for you. We will be discussing, please come to the Quality of Life meeting. We would love to have you attend and tell us, once you've moved down, what it's like to live in our community and what we can do to help you. Jody and Eric, once again, thank you so much for attending and staying later and answering our questions.
Sure.
Thanks for having us.
And again, Shams, please understand that our arguments with the city are not against you, they are for you. And when you get here, you'll be like every other neighbor. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Leilani, sorry.
And I'll relay that back to my fellow residents.
Yeah. And we're sorry that they're moving you. Really, we're sorry. All right, with that, and with Pat's blessing, it's 8:42, and we're going to call the meeting to close. I want to thank all of our electeds. I want to thank all of our panelists today, the public who hung in with us. We appreciate your support. We hope that you will sign up and come see us on future community board meetings. We have a lot to do to rebuild Lower Manhattan and help our community. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And don't forget to sign up for our email list and like us on YouTube and Twitter. Thanks.
Tammy, you did awesome. I love you. Thank you so much for being such a great host.
Thank you. Can't wait to make
love
money.
that.
Appreciate you.
Jams, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Sam, you rock.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you. Good night. April, thank you. You're my rock star for making this work.
Thank you, April.
Oh, and Charlie. We forgot to thank Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Gail's office.
Oh, Leilani,
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, MBPO.